Good evening and welcome to the TNT Show. Tonight we're well into our second century of TNT shows, and I'm John Drummond. I'm your host for the next 60 minutes. And thanks to you, the TNT Show and Indy Live are growing and delivering more exciting shows than ever before. And remember, you can watch us on this show on indylive.net, which is streamed out to YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. Plus, on YouTube, you can see all the previous shows. And we've had some, with the greatest of modesty, we've had some really great shows featuring a whole range of people that you would never, ever see on so-called mainstream media. And now you've got a chance to support this vital channel, and I hope you'll do so. For example, if you're upset about media coverage of political events, where journalism is often junked in favour of stenography or rehashed press or news releases, if you're looking for an alternative voice, well, you found it. We are here for you. All we ask is, will you be here for us? Please donate whatever you can. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. And let me just go on to say, it's been another great day for British democracy. We find out today that Sir Linton Crosby's firm, do you remember Sir Linton Crosby, the polling and research guru for the Conservatives? We find out that his firm lobbied ministers for coal, tobacco, and property firms. All at the same time, he was providing political advice to Boris Johnson. Well, I don't know. The ministerial code calls for there to be no conflict of interest. Maybe ministerial codes don't apply to advisors, and if they don't, then they ought. Tonight, we're talking to a special guest. We'll be discussing Lib Dems for Independence with founding member Cameron Greer. Now, Cameron is here for a full hour, so he'll be taking your questions live, and there's still time to get your question considered. You'll find the details at indylive.net. As you know, TNT, the nation stands for The Nation Talks. So in many respects, this is your show. We're live and we're free. So no license, no problem. Now, to our guest tonight. Tonight, The Nation talks to Cameron Greer. How are you, Cameron?
I'm great, thanks, John. I'm excited to take some questions for the audience.
Yeah, well, we'll have those in plenty as we go along. So where are you joining us from tonight?
So I'm joining you from Aberdeen. I'm currently at uni at Aberdeen, studying politics in Gaelic. I'm originally from Langham, all the way down in Dumfries and Galloway. And
a lot of Gaelic speakers down
there? Not too many Gaelic speakers down in Langham, but there's a surprising quite few in Aberdeen, thankfully. So we're hoping to boost the numbers in the coming years with some great policy, like the upcoming Scottish Languages Bill that'll protect Gaelic and Scots for another few decades.
What do you feel about, as you must have experienced this, about how many people on the non-independence side of the constitutional debate seem very threatened by Gaelic? Why do you think that is?
I think it's because they view it as a nationalistic tool that has been used by this SNP government to... I'm not sure how to word it, really. It's quite mind-boggling to think how somebody could be so threatened by a language. I wrote an article about this in Byline Scotland not that long ago, and it's really been used as a political football by unionists, especially, to like the full road sign rage. People shouting at pieces of metal, saying that it's dangerous to drivers to have Gaelic on road signs because it confuses drivers. But that's just really a load of nonsense. And the revival of Gaelic will be great for Scottish culture, and it'll bring back memories of the golden age of Scottish culture.
Yeah, well, it sounds very constructive, but I'm reminded that traveling through the States, there was always a group of people who objected to using Native American Indian term because they felt that, well, you know, these people need to get up to speed, and you'll love this. They, they would say to me things like, they should speak English like we Americans do, because it's our native language. And I thought, I'm not sure it is your native language.
Yes, some colonial remains there.
But
Yeah,
it does seem to me
it is.
that there's a worldwide thing going on here about people who are not progressive feeling threatened by anything really that suggests there's another way of looking at life.
Yeah, I feel that's the case, especially with Gaelic, and it stems from the history with the oppression of Gaelic from all the way back to the Statutes of Iona, and even in recent history, in the 20th and 19th centuries, where school children were beaten for speaking Gaelic in schools and humiliated, just like with the Welsh Not in Wales and the banning of the Irish language in Ireland when it was a colony. It all stems from that, and it's linguicide, really, trying to kill off the language. And it is a bit, it's very strange, really.
Yeah. Well, it's strange things happen in politics, I guess. And people often use whatever lever or tool is available to them to beat the opposition about the head. And then sometimes the opposition joins in and it becomes a bit of a free-for-all. You never know these things. Tell us about Scottish Liberals for Independence. What's that all about? What prompted you to set it up? And why do you think there's a need for it?
Yeah, so myself and my good friend Jake Stevenson, we're both members of the Liberal Democrats. We one day thought, we were talking about independence and saying there's not really any group that represents us. There's a lot of independence groups, like, but they're all like Yes Scotland, which is attached to the SNP, Green Yes, which is the Greens.
Sorry to interrupt, if I may, but we're getting some noise on your sound. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but it sounds like something's moving around about where the mic is. But sorry,
Right.
Carry on. If it keeps coming on, then we may have to do something about it.
I'll try and keep still. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
The question is, why Scottish Liberals for Independence, and why did you feel that it was necessary to create this whole new body?
Yeah, so right at the beginning, we set it up as a group for Liberal Democrats within the party, to a view of being an associated organisation representing pro-independence views and pro-independence members within the Liberal Democrats. But we soon realised that that wasn't viable with the pushback. It wasn't pushback from the party as such. It was more members. And we realized we weren't going to meet the criteria. So we thought it would be way more constructive if we still represented those people, but maybe not within the party, but out with. So that's when Scottish Liberals for Indy came about. And now we're not affiliated to any party. We're non-partisan in that way, to open ourselves up to other opportunities that comes with that. And we've opened up our membership to anybody that agrees with our policies, which you can find on our website, which will be coming up on the reel below at some point during this broadcast. But yeah, we thought there was a gap in the market, really, for Liberals within the independence movement, because it's not as cross-party as maybe many other independence movements are, which leads to factionalism. And I feel like there's Socialists for Independence, which stem from, I believe, Labour for Independence. There's Yes Scotland, which is the SNP's campaign. There's Green Yes. And we thought there's not really any group that is representing Liberals. And I feel like Scotland is full of Liberals. If you look at our electoral history, there's Lib Dems, Liberals all over Scotland, representing Scotland. And I thought, surely there should be a group that represents all of those people. And we've had great feedback from that, saying that people have felt disillusioned by the independence movement because they've not felt represented by any groups. And I mean, we really are cross-party. We've got Lib Dems, obviously, we've got SNP and Greens as well, and people who aren't in a party. And I feel like that's really healthy and a great thing for the independence movement, that everyone can come together under this banner and campaign for independence.
What would you say to people who might say, oh, that's very divisive, what you've just done?
In what way?
Well, for example, you've already divided yourself away from the main Lib Dem party. People may say you're just a bunch of separatists. You don't want to be part of anybody. You're just there to do literally your own thing. What would you say to that criticism?
Well, I'd say that we're actually bringing people together, and we're bringing parties together as well, because I think we can all agree that the SNP is quite a big tent of people from right to left. We've got John Mason, for example. He's quite socially conservative, and we've got people like the name slips me, but we've got very progressive people within the SNP as well. And I feel like within that, there's obviously going to be the internal arguments. And I think we're helping people come together from different parties that we wouldn't have thought. There was Liberals, for example, in the Greens, because they're quite left-wing, but we're bringing Greens together, we're bringing SNP together, Lib Dems. We accept anybody from any party as long as they agree with our policies. And I think that's a very healthy thing, that we're bringing loads of people together under one main policy, which is independence for Scotland. If
people watching and listening tonight want to support you, what's the easiest way for them to do so, Cameron?
Well, we're quite a Twitter-based organisation, as most political things are. So if you want to support us, if you want to find out more, on the screen right now, you've got the link to our Twitter page, and we've also got a new website, which is under kind of renovations at the moment. But you'll be able to find all the basic information on our website, and we try to tweet every day on Twitter. And we've also got Facebook, which you can find from Twitter. And we've got a Discord server as well for anybody that wants to join. And we've got a page on the Hub as well, the Scottish Independence social media site.
Cool. Excellent. I'm going to put a question to you now that we've asked so many people, and we've never had a hugely convincing argument, which is that, and I'm asking you this particularly because your interest is in politics generally. I know we've been talking about the specifics of Lib Dems for independence, and no doubt we'll be talking more about the Constitution and etc. But just a very general point. If you look at almost every independence movement across the world, past and present, they all have a right-wing element, what you might call a blood and soil type separatism or secessionism, which other people in the independence separatist movement are repelled by. But nonetheless, it generally exists. I mean, there is this section that always crops up. It hasn't happened in Scotland. Why is that?
You know, it is very interesting how it has not cropped up. It has had its moments with the Scottish National Liberation Army, but that never really came to anything at all. You've also got the likes of Sion and Gael, which are unfortunately becoming a bit not mainstream, but more noticeable. which it really disgusts me. But it is a good question to ask, and it is quite interesting because, as you say, there are usually very right-wing elements of nationalistic movements. I think
maybe you could pose that question during your course.
yes,
I'd love to hear the answers to that, because we've struggled hard. I mean, we've had right-wing commentators on the show, and very happy to have them. And when we put that question, I think the most lucid answer we've had is, well, the SNP is a broad church. You really don't know what's going on in there, which I found unconvincing. Because if there's one thing that marks the SNP, and it's the reason for my question in part, is because if you look at the spectrum on a right-left axis, I mean, all of the independent stroke separatist secessionist groups are crowded on the left.
Yeah.
There's a big gap. And you think, well, and why the heck is that?
The SNP, I think they do play quite a big, well, they obviously play a massive role in the independence movement, so they're quite influential. And they have done a good job of keeping the far right at bay within their party as a big tent organisation. So I think it was in the 50s, I think 55, that they kicked out the ethno-nationalist section of their party, who were like calling for the killings of English people or something like that. And they were all kicked out, which I believe eventually turned into something like Sion and Gael. And yeah, I think that's probably one of the main reasons, is that the biggest movements keep the far right at bay. I mean, the Greens, they're nowhere near the far right.
Well, but why would it though? I mean, all it does is leave a gap in the market. I mean, and the market abhors a gap. Invariably, whether it be a political market or a commercial market, somebody comes along to say, there's a whole bunch of consumers out there whose needs are not being met. I'm here to do exactly that. And I mean, it happened with the main Conservative Party. The ERG found itself in that position. Now, its answer was to take over the main party, the Conservatives. But before it took over the Conservatives, it had a viability on its own, which was anti-European, anti-immigrant, and I mean, anything progressive was an antipathy. But nonetheless, they served their time out there in the periphery until they became mainstream by taking over the Tories, I suppose. But it's always struck me as a very odd thing that there's not, for example, a Scottish Conservatives for Independence.
Yes. Well, I think there's, many people who would align with the Tories in Scotland who also support independence. I think a few of them would look at the SNP, for example, as like that big tent organisation, or just not have a party at all.
It's just very odd. I just, you know, again, we've never had a hugely convincing answer to it. And I mean, the more likely occurrence is a fracturing between the Conservatives and Unionists, because there must be masses of Conservatives who generally take a general view that there's nothing about Scotland that is terribly and inherently unable to form its own future. It's just that they would prefer it to be part of this bigger entity called the UK, but they're happy to be seen as different when they go to London, very comfortable being seen as different, and go out their way to see things like I'm Scottish and stuff like this, and wearing the kilt and Highland dress and stuff, but then come back and vote for a Unionist party, which is the antipathy of what they had been saying perhaps the night before at a burn supper, for instance. So I mean, the sense there is that that's not sustainable in the medium and long term, perhaps. And therefore, there has to be something that represents right-wing voters in an independent Scotland. Now, you would say, after independence, there no doubt will be the emergence of a Scottish Conservative Party, which is patriotic, but at the same time right-wing. Who knows? But it's interesting to me that nobody's actually said, oh, we need to make a start on this, because if we leave it too late, various nutters will appear on the scene saying they're Scottish Conservatives for independence, and then we'll be lost.
Yeah, that is very interesting, and that is something that does very much interest me, and it's something that I would go off to study later on in my uni career as part of my degree, because it is a very, very good question, which not a lot of people, I imagine, have an answer to.
Well, yeah. It will be interesting to see how well the Conservatives and Unionists can hang together, because in several respects they're very uneasy bedfellows.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to, if you're going to be a Conservative in Scotland, you have to accept the most loathsome anti-Scottish attitudes and material and make it your own, which must be irksome to a lot of people, I would imagine. But who knows? Maybe it's not as unpalatable as it looks to me from a distance. So when you get your degree, as you will, no doubt, what do you plan to do with it, Cameron?
Well, I think there's a very large gap in the market in Gaelic media. I think we should take an approach similar to Ireland. They've just created a new movie in Irish, and I believe there's only one film in Scottish Gaelic, and it was made a decade ago or more. So there is a large gap in the market for Gaelic media, and I think that's something I would definitely like to go into. But politics is the thing that really has my heart. So I could see myself running for Parliament, Council, or whatever, because I'm really passionate about representing my community, especially with it being so rural. It's very misrepresented as a very conservative area. And to be fair, we do have all Tory representatives. We have David Mundell in the UK Parliament. We've got Oliver Mundell in the Scottish Parliament, and we've got 2 Tories and 1 Labour in the council. But it was very liberal even a decade ago or 2 decades ago. It was even more liberal. Yeah. And I think it's the divisiveness of the independence argument that has really spurred that on. But yeah, I would definitely like to represent my community, because it's something I'm really passionate about, and I feel like I could make a very good change within that community.
Good. Well, that sounds very positive to me. We've had a question that says, do you think there are still remnants of the old Liberal Party in Scotland?
Yes. I think Scotland is quite a liberal country. It's much, much more liberal than, for example, England and also Wales. You can see that with what parties we elect at elections. So the Conservatives almost always win elections in England, the majority of seats in England, in general elections. Whereas in Scotland, it's been traditionally a Liberal Party, like the question, Labour as well, and now SNP, all 3 of which are progressive and liberal. And I think since the decline of the Liberal Party and the rise of Labour instead, I feel like the Liberals have been, the support for the Liberals has been stacked into different parties, which is quite important.
Cameron, your sound is breaking up again. I'm sorry. If you could just hold. I know it's difficult when you feel enthusiastic, but if you can just keep your head still a little bit longer,
yes,
I think it would help me, because I think it's been picked up by the mics in your earbuds.
Yeah.
So, sorry to interrupt.
I'll refrain from moving about. But I think it's been the support of the Liberal Party was sapped into other parties, which is quite unfortunate for the Lib Dems, and they've never really been able to recover from that. until around about Nick Clegg's time, where we had quite a revival around the country, and Charles Kennedy as well. And all of those figures were really good in the revival of liberalism within Scotland and the UK. But unfortunately, obviously, in what was it, 2015, that it was eventually the collapse of the Liberal Democrats after the dreaded coalition, which I definitely do not agree with. I think, I mean, I was 8 at the time the coalition came around, so I definitely have my opinions on it, but I can see the view from the other side, but I don't agree that we should have gone into it. And it has detrimentally impacted the regaining of like the gains that liberalism made in Scotland. But there are definitely remnants you can still see in the Highlands and the Islands, like Orkney and Shetland, always Lib Dem, always Liberal before that. Caithness, Sutherland and Easter Ross and Ross, Jamie Stone's in there still. And you can still see the remnants of the old Liberal Party in the strongholds that still remain a century or more later.
That's interesting. We've had a question from Wayne, and he's saying in 2012, the Scottish Lib Dems joined the Better Together campaign with other unionist political parties to campaign for a no vote in the 2014 Indy referendum. I mean, that's a fact. And it probably seemed to a lot of people the Lib Dems were unionists first and Liberals and Democrats afterwards.
I don't agree that we should have entered Better Together, just like I don't agree we should have entered the coalition. I think both were extremely detrimental to our standing as a serious party. I think we have regained some respect, but I feel like if we go into another Better Together situation, another Better Together campaign, that would be the end of the Liberal Democrats in Scotland. I mean, it gets me quite angry, the thought of going into another Better Together situation, but I don't think we would, because I think it's a general consensus within the party that we shouldn't, but I could be wrong. You never know, really.
But I'll put the question to you that crops up in every situation when there's a discussion of this nature, which is that if you feel the way you feel, would it not have been better to have stayed within the Lib Dems to try and change the policy away from a commitment to unionism to a commitment to liberalism and democracy?
Well, me and Jake, especially, we've remained members of the Lib Dems, and we are still advocates for. So we advocate for a neutral stance from the party.
Sorry, you're breaking up again, Cameron.
So we advocate for a neutral stance from the party to let members decide what they want to campaign for, and therefore not join another Better Together campaign. Just be a participant within the referendum as the Lib Dems and let members decide, because there are a surprising amount of members who support independence, just like in Labour as well. Some reports say up to like a third of Labour members support independence, and it must be the same notorious, like you say. But yeah, I think we are still advocates for that, and we are still pushing for the Lib Dems to do that. And as Scottish Liberals friendly as well, we also call for that. But to remain within the Lib Dems, I think that would have been a mistake, because now we've created an organisation which we're very proud of and brings people together.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that from your point of view. And by the way, the audio is now fine. I don't quite understand what's changing because you're not changing, but somehow the audio just clarifies it. Another question. Jock Thompson is asking, what are the main policies which differentiate the Libs for Indy from other Indy parties?
So I think something that especially sets us out from the rest is that we are a Republican organisation. So we would like to get rid of the monarchy.
Sorry, Cameron, you're breaking up again. Could you take one of the earphones out and see if that helps? Okay.
Is that, yeah?
No, try taking the other one out and putting the first one back.
Is that all right now?
No, wait, stop. Put them both back in again because it's not making any difference. I don't understand it. There must be something that's happening where you are I can't see. But sorry,
there's quite a big storm in Aberdeen. It was raining sideways earlier, but hopefully it'll clear up so that it becomes a bit better. But I was saying that we were a Republican organisation, so we want to get rid of the monarchy in the event that Scotland does vote to leave the UK. And also, if we vote to stay in the Union again, we still will campaign to get rid of the monarchy for the whole UK, because we don't believe that it should be a thing in a so-called democratic society.
Got it. What would you replace the monarchy with?
So our policy is to replace it with an Irish-style presidential system, so a ceremonial president that is elected and does basically the same job as a monarch, but actually you can hold them to account.
Right. I suppose the example of Ireland is probably helps your case in that regard, because they've had some exceptionally fine presidents. But I can think of countries where they haven't had such fine presidents. I mean, I'm thinking about the United States, for example, but that's a different political setup, I suppose. But isn't that one of the? I mean, I think correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think when the Australians had a look at republicanism, it failed at the final hurdle because those who were against change suggested that a failed politician might end up as president instead of the monarch. And that just turned everyone off.
Well, the hope is that if you can vote for them, then you won't get a failed politician.
Well, that's the logic. It didn't actually appeal to too many Australians, and I think that's what happens when you get a very polarized society as well. You can paint the opposition policy by using a personality to damn it, rather than actually dealing with the policy itself. But that's the nature of politics, I suppose. So how would you get around that? If somebody, for example, postulated that what would happen if Nigel Farage became our president? How would you respond to that?
I mean, obviously, I think you can tell that I'm not the biggest fan of Nigel Farage. But I mean, that's democracy, I guess. If the people want Nigel Farage as president, I mean, I very much don't agree with it, but that's the nature of democracy, as you say. It's politics, and it's just democracy. And if the people vote for it, that's what the people get.
Yeah. How would you feel about because we speak to a number of groups like yours who want independence but want respect for particular policies like republicanism, but other facets that they feel don't get the coverage, for example, that the mainstream parties provide. They just get overlooked in respects, and people think they're important. But I mean, one of the issues there is that how does one capture all these different viewpoints? I mean, the Scottish government, I'm not sure what happened to it. The Scottish government postulated the idea of a constitutional convention that would be an umbrella that would gather everyone who believed in independence together, regardless of their particular priorities. How would you feel about that? Would you commend that to other Lib Dems if you thought it was a good idea?
I think we should always work together as much as possible in our own respects and own regards. I think we should unite the independence movement between the SNP and the Greens, and also Indy supporting members of other parties, unionist parties like myself, and also members of Labour and the Tories. I think we should always come together. So maybe a constitutional convention is the right setting for that, but it definitely needs to happen in some form.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to be a sensible way forward. It gives lots of people with slightly different, sometimes majorly different views, but a common purpose in terms of independence, the opportunity to ventilate those thoughts and different policies in a setting that has some cohesion to it. What bedevils all of this, of course, is the fact that the Lib Dems themselves, when you take the approach to another referendum, seem to be neither liberal nor democratic. What do you think inspires that viewpoint?
I think the Lib Dems have lost their way and are trying to figure out a way of coming back. And I think the natural thing was to go for federalism, which is a section of unionism. So it's devolving more power to Scotland, but not full independence. So it would, I believe the Lib Dem policy is that Scotland could raise some of its tax earnings. And I feel like that was it's a very liberal policy. But I believe that self-determination is a liberal principle, and I feel there are a lot of independent supporting Lib Dems within the party, and I feel like they need to be more represented, and that's why I don't think we should be in a better together situation again as well. So
yeah, because I mean, to oppose another referendum does not sound hugely democratic.
No. I can. So I myself used to be quite a staunch unionist until I did quite a bit of research myself, and I feel like the more you talk, especially at conference. I mean, Jake told me a story at conference where people were saying to him, "Oh, you're like Scottish Liberals for Indy," and saying stuff like that, and he would have a casual conversation with them and just explain more, and they would be very understanding. And I think that's what needs to happen, really. More conversations and frank and nice conversations need to happen to convince more people to join over the line. But I mean, I don't know. The Lib Dems need to reevaluate their policy on the constitution, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Realistically, it's going to be a unionist party for some time to come, but we'll have to see, really.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing for me is that they haven't really emphasized the alternatives. I mean, they could have moved to the so-called middle ground and said, look, we're in favor of federalism. This is the way it's going to work. We're going to do our level best to work with everyone to bring that about. That doesn't seem to have happened from the outside. What seems to have happened, by contrast, is to double down on unionism. Is that the
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't like to say electoral strategy, but something along those lines of, I believe if we did become a neutral party, like middle ground, like I think that would be very beneficial and allow independent supporting people that identify with the Lib Dems outside of the independence argument would be attracted back to the party. And I think that would be the way forward for the Lib Dems. But unfortunately, I think the doubling down of unionism is an electoral strategy of some description. And we can see in the last Scottish Parliament election that it kind of worked for us in the sense that in the constituencies that we hold, we increased our majorities by a hell of a lot, except with the exception of Shetland. But Alex Cole-Hamilton in Edinburgh Western, he got the most amounts of votes for any candidate in any Scottish Parliament election. And that's because of tactical voting on unionist sides. So I think that was a strategy to make sure that we weren't hit too hard.
Okay.
But it's also very entrenched within the Lib Dems unionism, and it's something that will remain, I think, for the rest of the party's lifetime.
I mean, the flaw in that strategy, of course, is if there was ever a right-wing Federalist Party, then all these people who came in behind the Lib Dems because they were unionists rather than Lib Dems, in other words, they lent the Lib Dems their vote. And a PR system encourages fracturing of that nature. And maybe you made the point earlier that the Conservatives, scoop up votes in England in particular. But I would suggest to you that a lot of that's got to do with the first past the post system, which gives an undue advantage to somebody who, I mean, the whole business of targeting about 100 seats because that nothing much is going to happen otherwise. It seems terribly undemocratic somehow.
Absolutely. I mean, the survival of the first past the post system in UK Parliament elections is just mind-boggling, really. I mean, nearly every other country has got rid of first past the post. And I think it's well past time for us to change that system in all elections in the UK. And I'm really glad that Scotland has PR, which was actually a Lib Dem policy. So I think with that as an example, there's a lot of Lib Dem policies that independent supporters support, but they don't feel they can vote for the Lib Dems if they're so staunchly unionist.
Yeah.
And I think we need to address that, and that's why we're doing so badly in elections.
Yeah. I mean, in many respects, the Lib Dems have become sort of marginalised. I mean, they have a geographic strength, but it's not reflected right across the board. And you need to have that, it seems to me, in order to progress. But the other interesting thing is, and I like your view on this, when the Labour leader, Keith Starmer, was asked, what do you think of, changing the first past the post system, moving to progressive approach to proportional representation? What do you think of Brexit, etc.? His answers were classically conservative. He says, well, we have no intention of fooling around with first past the post, and furthermore, we're going to make Brexit work. Do you think Brexit can work?
No, simply no. Brexit is a complete disaster, especially for Scotland, which got a lot of funding from the European Union for infrastructure and stuff like that. I mean, in Aberdeen at the moment, almost every bus that goes by, it's got the European Union flag on it because it was funded by the European Union, which is like very low carbon buses, which is great for the environment. And I think the damages done by Brexit has shown people how much of a mistake it was. Brexit can never work. And I think Keir Starmer, again, he's trying to auction himself as a more conservative Labour leader to attract the Conservative voters that the Labour voters that he lost the Conservatives last election. He's trying to get them and more back by positioning himself as like tough on immigration, tough on crime, You can see it in their public messaging at the moment. And yeah, it's just a bit, again, strange. It's politics, really, and that's the strangeness of politics, that you can be a Labour leader and be the leader of a progressive party, and
You're breaking up again, Cameron. It's really bad. We can scarcely hear you. It's every third word or so. But I think what it may be, and here's me trying to reach back to my science degree of decades ago, it may be that your Bluetooth is being interfered with by Bluetooth devices elsewhere. I'm not sure how much fidelity you can expect from Bluetooth connections. But anyway, let's continue onwards. Let's keep the show on the road. What you've just said about Keir Starmer, it smacks of cynicism on his part, that he's prepared to tack in order to scoop up a few red wall voters here, a few anti-immigration voters there. It doesn't sound principled to me. I mean, am I reading him wrong, do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Labour, to be honest. And I'm not a big Keir Starmer fan. I think he's a lot better than whatever the Tories have to offer, which honestly isn't that hard anymore. But it is unprincipled and it is iffy. But I would much prefer him as UK Prime Minister than anybody in the Tory party.
But don't you think you might end up being very disappointed? Because if he's doing what the Tories do, which is to say, I'm going to tell you whatever you want to hear in order to get into office. Once I'm in office, hey, anything goes. How do you know that's not going to happen, for example?
I mean, every governing party does it, or every party that is going for office does. It makes promises and it does election messaging, and about 90% of the time, most of the stuff that's in their election campaigns.
Sorry, Cameron, you're breaking up so badly we can't hear you at all in parts. It's just, I'm not sure why it's working this way, because when we tested it earlier, it was perfectly okay. But anyway, so what we're going to have to do, if you're prepared and you find this acceptable, we'd like for you to come back on a future show once we fix the audio, maybe with some headphones and a direct connection to your device, because what you've had to say has been very interesting. It's just that we can't hear a lot of your replies, and it's a shame because they deserve a proper way of looking at things. So we need to. I'm going to close off now because it's very difficult for people to listen. And if you're agreeable, then we'll have you back for a future show, and maybe with Jake, and we can talk some more because what you've had to say has been very interesting, and it's a great pity that people can't hear it because I think I'm hearing it better than the broadcast version. So there we are. Let me say thank you again. It's been very educational. It's been very instructive, and I appreciate you taking the time. And we're going to quit now. And then if you can stay on the line, we'll try and find another slot in your diary and you can come back and talk to us once more. So good night, everyone. We're going to close off now. If you can stick around, please, Cameron, for a couple of minutes after we've done so. Okay, Kevin, if you'd like to bring up the final section, please. Let me just...